up, party people? I'm Jamila. This is JemilaBeReadin, because I do be reading. And in today's video, I am going to be catching you up on the books that I've read in May, June, and July. These last few months have really flown by. It's been so busy for me, just a lot of travel, just a lot of things going on in my life. So I haven't been able to keep up with, like I said, I would. With my monthly wrap-ups, but I'm here to catch you up on the last 3 months. It's been a little over a month since my last video. Listen, it's summertime. I'm outside. I don't know what to tell you. I've just had so many plans. Like I said, I've been traveling a lot, and July, I had my birthday, so there's that, and then I had a friend come in town, and then all these things. I got super into the World Cup, y'all. Like, you don't even know. That really took over like the first 2 weeks of July for me. More than that, like 2.5 weeks, three weeks. I've just been in it since end of June. I was really into the World Cup. Like, I fear that maybe I'm a soccer gal, a football gal now. So that's that's a newfound interest for me. And then I also just haven't been reading really. Yeah, you'll see when it comes to July. I read only 2 books. I don't know what to tell you. I'm outside. It's summertime. You know, I'm outside. But I'm hoping to be less outside in August. I think wildfire season is approaching. So I'll probably be inside more. So I'm hoping to read some more, get back into the swing of things. But let's talk about the books that I have read the last few months. So let's start with May. The first book that I finished in May was This Kingdom Will Not Kill Me by Ilona Andrews. This is the first book in the Maggie the Undying trilogy series. I don't know how many books it's going to be. This is my first time reading from Ilona Andrews. I also only recently discovered that it was a husband-wife writing duo, not one person. So but I've heard good things about their books, especially people who love to read like urban fantasy and stuff like that. So I wanted to check this one out. This one's like fantasy, and it had a really interesting premise. So it's following our main character, Maggie. She is a big fan of this like fantasy series, and the last book has just been unfinished. Think George R.R. Martin, you know, think Patrick Rothfuss, just constantly waiting. Years and years go by, still no last book. And so she's like such a big fan. She's like reread these books over and over again. She's like really into the fandom, like really about like trying to figure out what's going to happen next. And one day she wakes up and she is naked in a gutter. And she realizes that she has been transported into this fantasy world. This is a kind of like an isekai story or a portal fantasy. And it's, you know, this city in this fantasy series that she loves. And she has to like navigate this world. It's really dark. There's like war a-brewing. And she basically poses as like someone who can see the future or is like a fortune teller, because she obviously knows like everything about everyone because she's read the books. She obviously doesn't know how everything's going to end, but she knows so much lore and history of this world. So she kind of poses as someone who's able to see things. She's also called Maggie the Undying because she can't die in this world, it turns out. So yeah, she kind of just gets swept up. She's trying to stop something from happening. I won't say what that thing is. And she ends up kind of accruing a ragtag team plus a guy, a man who turns out to have secrets of his own. And honestly, this was a really good time. I didn't know what to expect. Like I said, I'd never read from this author duo before, and I know that this was their first foray into like high fantasy. I will say the beginning was so info dumpy and it continues to be a little bit info dumpy throughout the book, but it got better, or maybe I just got used to it. But man, I was like, please, this is too much right now. Can't we just slowly introduce this information as necessary? But it would just be a lot. But you know, once I got past like 40%, 50% into the book, I was really into it. Like, I really liked the characters. I was really intrigued to see what was going on. It was just so much fun. And this like burgeoning romance, like that doesn't even really become much of anything in this first book, was just so juicy. So I really like this one. I think this could be a series where each individual book I don't necessarily rate like 5 stars, but it could end up being like a 5-star series in my heart kind of thing. Like I said, I have some issues with some of the way, you know, the pacing worked out and all the info dumping, but overall I really did like this world and the characters, and I'm very, very excited for the second book. I need that ASAP actually. So this one I ended up rating a 3.75 stars. But I really, really enjoyed this one despite some of its flaws. The next book that I finished in May is Nasty Work by Erica Hart. I listened to this one on audio. Erica Hart is a content creator slash like social justice, sex work, positivity, like content creator that I've been following for many years now. It could be like a little over a decade now. When I saw that they were coming out with this book, I was like, of course I'm gonna read this, and it was really interesting. I liked this one. I don't know that it was necessarily like memorable for me now that I'm a couple months out. I gave this one a 4-star at the time, and I do think there's a lot of interesting and useful information in this book. A part of it is kind of like, it's a little bit memoir-ish. I would say like parts of their life is kind of a focal point to talk about larger like societal discussions, especially around sex education, being Black and queer, being disabled and navigating that in relationships, and being in interracial relationships and choosing not to be in interracial relationships anymore and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting. Erica Hart narrates it, and yeah, I guess I don't have like a ton to say. I think I will stick with the 4-star rating. I don't know that all of that information was necessarily like new for me, but it was interesting to hear more about their life, especially because I feel like there was a lot of stuff on there that I didn't know about. So yeah, the next book, the next book that I read was Yesteryear, which I did I post? Yeah, I think my last video, no, 2 videos ago, the Color Wheel one, I talked a lot about Yesteryear there, and I also made like a near 10-minute long review over on TikTok. Like, I'll link that down below if you want to go watch that. I'm not gonna hash out everything again, and I don't have it with me to show you. I let a friend borrow it, but this is Yesteryear by Claire Burke, which is the book of the year right now. Everyone's talking about it. It's getting a movie deal with Anne Hathaway's production company, all that jazz. And I didn't like it. It was a 2-star, and I've talked so much about this. I don't really want to get into all the reasons why again. So I'll just direct you to my Color Wheel video and my 10-minute TikTok review. Another book that I talked about in that Color Wheel video was How to Fake It in Society by KJ Charles. I'll keep this one brief as well. I think I gave this one like a 3.5 star. This is about Titus, who through circumstances ends up inheriting quite the fortune, and Nicholas, who is basically trying to steal this fortune, and they become friends, and then they also fall in love. And the beginning part of this was pretty rompy and fun, and then it really becomes into this like much more earnest book, and I wanted it to be a little bit more rompy and fun throughout the book. We did get a little bit of that at the end, but overall I would say this is a very quiet book despite its premise. I think this is, what is it? They call it a gender bent Georgette Heyer style antics. I don't know who Georgette Heyer is, but it kind of reminded me of that movie with Steve Martin and that other guy, and they're like conning people, like getting into relationships with like wealthy women. I can't remember the name of the movie right now, but you know what I mean, hopefully. But yeah, I thought this was fun. I liked it. I liked the romance it was kind of one of those romance books that I enjoyed in the moment, and I'm probably like not going to think about again, which I haven't. So the next book that I finished in May was Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. I was listening to the audiobook, and like halfway through I was like, I need to own a physical copy of this because I knew it was going to be a 5-star, and it was. So I ended up picking up a physical copy, but I listened to all of the book via audio. This is, I mean, I feel like a lot of people have probably read this by now. This is Michelle Zauner's memoir. She is the lead singer and like front woman of Japanese Breakfast, the band. And this is her memoir talking about her life, her relationship to her mother, and in particular, when her mother gets cancer and dies, and how she navigates that and the aftermath of all of that. And it's very much focused on the relationship, the kind of tumultuous relationship that she had with her mother, as well as her identity as a half Korean, half white American woman living in Eugene, Oregon, of all places. So this was so good. Michelle Zauner is such an incredible writer, and I feel like she touched on a lot of stuff that I could relate to, and I just kept thinking to myself, like, I need to spend more time with my mom while I was reading this. And I was like listening to this as I'm driving to work, and I'm just like crying, and then I walk in and I'm like, people, are you okay? And I'm like, don't talk to me right now. So this was so good. It really was so good. It's just so well written. I hope that Michelle Zauner writes more. Maybe like a short essay collection or something. I'm not totally into Japanese Breakfast. Like, the music is fine to me. It's not really my style of music, but I definitely like her writing. So check this one out if you haven't. I feel like I'm the last person to have read this. Literally, I was telling some friends that I was reading this, and they were like, I thought you read this already. And I was like, no, I haven't. I've been putting it off because I knew it was going to be a lot. And it took, I think this took me like the whole month, because I listened to like 50 or 60% of it, and then I was just getting so emotional. So I took like a couple weeks break and then finished the rest of it like towards the end of May. So there's that. Incredible. This is only my second 5-star read of the year. I have no 5-star fiction books. Hopefully that will change soon. And by the way, I finished this in June, so I guess we're now getting into June books. I read the majority of this in May, but I finished it like the first week of June. After that, the next book that I finished in June was Sisters in Yellow by Mieko Kawakami, and translated by Laurel Taylor and Hitomi Yoshio. This final copy was gifted to me by the publisher. I ended up reading this with a few of my friends. As if you've been watching me for a while, my friends, we call it the Alpacas Book Club. We read this together, and I didn't really know what to expect. I've heard of this author. I know she's a really prolific Japanese author. There's a couple of other books of hers that I really want to read, but this was the latest. Well, I don't think this is her latest book, but I think this is the latest book to be translated into English. And again, I didn't know what to expect, but it sounded really interesting. So this is about Hana. She's 15 years old. She lives with her mom. Her mom is like a hostess at like a bar or something like that, and she's not really around a lot, and she's so like go with the flow. Hana really has had to like raise herself, and she ends up meeting one of her mom's friends, Kimiko, and through circumstances, they end up opening a bar together and running this bar, and we're kind of just watching her as her relationship with Kimiko, but then also two of her friends who also help with this bar, and we're just kind of watching this, I want to say like maybe 2-year time span of her life, maybe a little bit longer, and all the people surrounding this bar and their community, and some things happen, and yeah, I don't know. I feel like I don't know how to explain it. It really is a look at like kind of like the Japanese underbelly, like nightlife and like gangs and stuff like that in Japan, and kind of the people that have gotten forgotten by society. This also is set, I believe, in the 90s. That was really interesting to see, especially with like Hana like didn't have her birth certificate, or like they were easily able to like scam credit card things because those were like new at the time. It was really interesting, but there was a lot I had a really good conversation with my friends about this. I ended up giving this one like a 3.5 star, but I feel like it's really like sat in my memory these last few months. So like maybe it's a 4 star. I think I want to reread this, but Hana was such an interesting character. Like so much of this is in her head, and it almost feels like she's a little bit of an unreliable narrator. What she's experiencing feels different than maybe what other people are experiencing of that same situation. And it was just so fascinating to watch her relationships with all these other people, and how it kind of really devolved towards the end. She was such a fascinating character. Like this was a really interesting character study. I really like this one. I think you should check it out. Then I started reading some books for a failed video. I don't know. It's like almost done. I need to read one more book. So I'm not sure if maybe I might end up posting this video in like September. But I was working on a video about lady nights. I just feel like there was a lot of books coming out in the last few years where it was very much like lady nights, look at this, we have a woman night thing going on, and I kind of wanted to just like read a bunch of those and kind of see what I thought of them. The first one I read was The Everlasting by Alex E. Harrow. This one is following one of our main characters, Owen, who is a scholar in this world. I would say it's kind of similar. I think it feels like it's set in like maybe World War II England, but it's like its own world, but that's kind of the vibe I was getting. He's a scholar of Sir Una Everlasting. So this world is called Dominion, and Una was like the greatest hero, the greatest knight, especially at the the founding of this world. And so he's kind of like a scholar of her history, and kind of like the history of Dominion. And he ends up getting this book that is, I think, supposed to be like a very rare tales of her life, and he has to translate it, and it ends up being like this magical time travel book, and he gets sent back in time to when she's alive, and he has to help her at this. He comes to her kind of like towards the end of her journey, I suppose, and he kind of knows where things are headed, but he accompanies her on this kind of quest. And yeah, it's really interesting. So this is supposed to be kind of, I'm not sure if it's I guess it's an expanded version of the 6 Deaths of the Saint. I think that was the name of that short story. I read it years ago and I liked it at the time. So this is kind of expanded on that story, and there's like kind of like this loop thing kind of similar to that short story that's happening, and so we have like multiple timelines kind of. Okay. I think I am going to post this video eventually, and I talk about it. My thoughts are like fresh in those videos. But I just didn't, this is one of those books where it was like trying to be magical realism, in that the magic part of this is so light, but it's obviously there, and like everything kind of hinges on the magic, and it, like, as you go along and you start to understand what's going on, it made less sense to me, because now you've explained a little bit too much, and now I need to know how this is all working. I feel like there's a very fine balance when you're doing magical realism or like kind of like a light fantasy book, where you have to explain just enough that things make sense, right? But if you go too much, then and you're not explaining it, I mean, obviously it turns into like a hard fantasy, like more descriptive and more world building. There's just a fine line, because once you start introducing certain elements into the world building and then don't explain it or expand on it, then I'm gonna have a hard time, because I have many questions now. And that's kind of what happened with this book, because like it wasn't just that they started to explain a little bit too much about how this like time loop situation was going. Like, it actually, like, the plot hinged on it. So I just was getting really frustrated. I also didn't really like the characters. I'm gonna be honest. I know a lot of people love this book. So many of my mutuals love this. I wanted to love this so bad too. I went into this thinking it was gonna be at least a 4-star, and it was a 2-star. Towards how I felt was, I felt like pretty normal going into this, and then I started feeling kind of indifferent. And then I was just getting very irritated towards the end. So I didn't like this one, and I gave it 2 stars. The other books that I read for that video, I'll just touch on real quick, is Brighter Than Scale, Swifter Than Flame by Neon Yang. This is a novella, and it's following our main character, Yeva, or Yiva. I'm not quite sure how it's pronounced. When she's a teenager, she discovers that she has this magical ability, and she gets shipped off into this world's capital to train to become a like dragon slayer. So she does that, and she grows up doing that, and she's kind of lost touch with her culture. She's like mixed. Her mother is from another country in this world, and her father is a part of this, the one where she ended up being trained, and they're very like conquery and stuff like that. Anyway, so she kind of loses tracks of her culture. She also doesn't show her face, and she just wears like armor, and like no one can see her. There are reports that this other country, who is kind of like a tentative ally, is there's a dragon there or something, and so she gets sent on like a kind of like ambassador kind of mission, basically, to go scope things out. And so she ends up staying there for like many months and ends up falling in love with the monarch, the queen. Yeah, and then things happen a lot at the end. I feel like I would say it's very slow, and then a lot of things happen at the end. It was fine. I give this one 3 stars. I don't really have much to say about it, and I frankly have not thought much about it since I read it. And the other book was Spear by Nicola Griffith, which I know a lot of people also like. This is another novella. This is supposed to be a retelling a bit of like Percival's story from like the King Arthur mythology, but it's like gender bent, and we're just following, what's her name? Well, I guess she's not named in the description. She gets names towards the end. But yeah, it's basically, if you're familiar with Percival's story, it's basically that, but like gender bent and like more filled in. This girl grows up in this forest with her mom, away from civilization. She ends up kind of leaving and embarking on her own life, and, you know, wants to be a knight for King Arthur, and goes on all these quests and adventures and stuff like that. Again, this one was just fine to me. It was a little bit better than Brighter Than Scale, Swifter Than Flame, so I gave that one a 3.5 stars. But yeah, I don't know. None of these, I think this is part of the reason why I was starting to get discouraged with this video project, because I was like, everything is just to me right now. And I had one more book that I wanted to read that I had started, but I was starting to feel very slumpy, and I was like, I just can't do this right now. The final book I needed to read was, what is it called? The Second Death of Locke. So I'll probably read that in September and finish up the video and post it then. And we'll see how that goes. Other books that I read in June was The Mist Connection by Tia Williams. This final copy and the e-arc that I ended up reading were gifted to me by the publisher. I love Tia Williams. Unfortunately, I didn't love this book. I still gave it a 3-star, but this is definitely my least favorite of Tia Williams' works. It just didn't feel like her. I don't know. This was just a very weird experience. This is following our main character, Sasha, and a couple of years before the start of this book, she experiences a very traumatic situation that really alters her life. She ends up kind of becoming a recluse, and is not working, and she it's kind of like hidden away from life, basically. At the start of this book, she just started a new job. She's really trying to get herself back out there, get out of this funk. And she is flying to Paris for a work trip. And on this flight, she ends up meeting this guy who's sitting next to her. And she, is taking, medication to help with flight anxiety. I forget what exactly it is that she took, and then was also drinking. And so she ends up having like this very like long conversation with this guy over the course of the flight, and they really hit it off. But she's a little bit drunk and doesn't really think to ask his name or any contact information, and he also doesn't. So at the end of this flight, they go their separate ways, and she gets to her hotel, and in this drunken mindset ends up emailing one of her coworkers about this situation and like this misconnection situation, but she doesn't realize that she has added everyone in this company to this email. So then now everyone knows about it and is like trying to help her find this guy. And so after her trip, she comes back to New York where she lives, and she ends up going to this private detective that she knew from that traumatic situation that she experienced, and she wants to hire him to help her find this guy because he said that he lives part-time in New York, part-time in Italy, I believe. And so she recruits this guy, and yeah, I'll leave it at that. I know a lot of people were shocked, one might say, by who ends up being the love interest. And I guess if you don't want to be surprised, I won't say anything, but if you would rather just know going into it, the love story is between her and the private detective, not the misconnection guy. I think a lot of people were led to believe that this was a story about her trying to find this misconnection and having a romance with this guy, but that's not what it is. And I know a lot of people were like disappointed. So I feel like I should say something so that you're not going in with the wrong expectations. I don't know, this felt very rushed to me. Their relationship felt very rushed. It was a hot mess. Everybody involved is a hot mess. I just feel like we weren't given enough time with these characters to really understand them and to really understand how they work together. And yeah, I don't know. This just didn't feel like up to Tia Williams' normal caliber. But I still had a good time. Like, I read this and it was entertaining. It's a 3-star, but it's nowhere near the same like quality level, in my opinion, as like 7 Days in June, or even the other book that she wrote. I'm blanking on the name. But I feel like if you still want like a fun summer read, check this one out. The other book that I read in June was When the Revolution Comes, A Fight for the Future of the Working Class by Chris Smalls. This final copy was gifted to me, but I did listen to the audiobook via Libby. This is about Chris Smalls, who is a union organizer with Amazon. That's kind of how he came to prominence, especially during the pandemic, as Amazon was doing a lot of fuck shit, as they do, and not providing safe working conditions for their employees during the pandemic and lockdown. So yeah, this is just following his story. It's basically, I would say, more memoir than like any sort of like political like union history or anything like that. It's very much about him, his life, and how he came to be in the situation where he's organizing. And I thought it was so interesting. He is a very interesting guy, and I think the one thing that I appreciated the most from this book is how much he emphasizes that he's just like a guy. Like, he's just a guy that like kind of stepped up and took it upon himself to like help himself and his coworkers and his community, and how literally anyone can do this. Like, you don't need to have XYZ degree, you don't need to have studied this, that, and the third to be an organizer. You just need to like have a care and passion for your community. And that's what I really appreciated about this book. He's lived quite the life. He is so interesting and fascinating, and I really hope he writes another book like about his exploits, with the flotilla going to Gaza to provide aid and all of this other stuff. This book kind of ends in like 2025, right when he like leaves being the union head for this particular Amazon facility. And there's just so much more that he's done that I'm very interested to hear more about. But I definitely recommend this. I think it's very approachable. I think it's a great starting place to learn more about union organizing. And it was just very interesting. So yeah, this one I gave like a 4.25 star. Okay, I ran out of storage on my camera, so I'm filming the rest of this on my phone. I hope the audio quality is not too bad. I'll try to project. But I just have 2 more books to talk about, and those are the 2 books that I read in July. The first book that I read in July is this book called 1201 by Bella J. This is an indie romance about, interesting names, time and midnight. So this book was so entertaining. So time, at the start of this book, is at her ex's wedding, fucking shit up with a bat. Okay, and then she goes to jail. Yeah, the opening pages are literally her from the jail cell. So we rewind it back, and we discover that about 5 to 6 months prior to the present, she was engaged to her ex. It was their wedding day, or maybe a few days before their wedding day, and she discovers that he has been cheating with her with his alleged cousin. Now, this was not a blood cousin, although that's kind of what he led her to believe. This was a play cousin, so they're not related to each other. They grew up together and apparently have been in love with each other this whole time, but just didn't do anything about it, but decided to do something later. So she breaks things off, they break up, and then he ends up getting engaged to this girl, literally within 5 months, and have a wedding in the winter. And she wanted a winter wedding, by the way. She wanted a winter wedding, but he convinced her to have a summer wedding or like a spring wedding. So she's pissed, and so she decides she's gonna go fuck shit up. So she lands herself in jail, but the charges are dropped. And as she's leaving the jail to try to figure out how to get back to her hotel, who's outside? This guy named Midnight. That's her ex's twin brother. Okay. So her ex's twin brother is like, get in the car. And she does not like this guy because they had met first, like through a dating app, and they were talking and really getting along. I don't think they ever met in person, but he ended things kind of abruptly and was like, basically like, you're too much for me or whatever. And so she is like, fuck you. And on top of that, I guess he's just beefing with her. Well, I know why, but I'm not gonna tell you. So they're just always antagonistic with each other this like whole time that she's been dating his twin brother. But he basically feels bad for her and doesn't want her to like get into any more trouble. So he picks her up and he's like, takes her to her hotel, stays with her, and was like, I know what you need. He also is kind of beefing with his twin. So he's trying to make his twin jealous. There's so much going on. He's basically like, we need to make him jealous, but also you need to like go have fun and let loose. Did I mention that it's like the day before New Year's Eve? So anyway, fast forward, they end up going to this party that's put on by his cousin, like actual blood cousin, called 1201. So before midnight, regular schmegular party. After midnight, it's a sex party, okay? And so she goes, you know, and things happen with the two of them. And then things continue to happen, and then things fall apart, but then things come back together. You know what I mean? As it is in a romance book. But if you feel like, oh, you're giving too much information, I promise you I'm not. You have to experience this for yourself. I had a blast. I had a lot of fun reading this book. There was also a lot of sex, okay? So if that's not your thing, maybe don't pick this one up. I did, at a certain point, I started skimming because I was like, this is a little too much. This is a little too much now. But it was hot. I'll give them that. So that was 1201. I gave it a 3-star, but it was a 3-star because it did what it needed to do. It wasn't exceptional to me, but I had a blast. and I definitely will be checking out perhaps more books from this author. The second book that I read in July, the final book that I read in July, is The Apothecary Diaries light novel, Volume 4. I'm not gonna say too much because it's Volume 4. I feel like I've talked a lot about Apothecary Diaries on this channel this year. I really got into the anime last year, and then I decided I was gonna start the light novels. I'm officially done now that I finished Volume 4 with everything that's been adapted into the anime. So moving forward, this is gonna be like new plot to me. But yeah, it was good. Reading this volume and kind of getting back into it just really reminded me how spot on the anime is in adapting. Like, it's almost like beat for beat exactly the same. Like, I was picturing exactly what was happening in the anime in the book. So if you're wondering if the anime is a really good adaptation of the light novels, it is. It's like, I think if you're like a purist where you're like everything needs to be exactly the same, that's what you get. But they still managed to make it fresh in anime form. Because, you know, different mediums are going to be different, but it works. And I enjoyed it, and I'm excited to continue and see the new stuff that's coming to me anyways. I'm not really rating these. Like, I don't really know how to rate light novels. I haven't really read much. I'm enjoying it. Just know I'm enjoying it. That's all you need to know. That was long. I feel like I've been talking for so long. I've been like coughing because my throat is getting dry. But those are all of the books that I read in May, June, and July. I'm hoping to get back onto the monthly schedule of wrap-up so that I'm not just sitting here and yapping for a million years. So I will catch y'all in the next video. Let me know what you've been reading, what's been a hit, what's been a dud, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.